So what percentage of voters don't recognise the leader of the Lib Dems? The answer is 36%.
We're going to find out what's the point of the Liberal Democrats now. We're asking if anybody cares about their policies or indeed know what they are. The answer to that last bit, as we've heard earlier, is no, not really. No, only 1 in 3 of us can actually recognise party leader Nick Clegg. Even deputy leader and part-time living saint Vince Cable has had a rough ride at the conference in Bournemouth this week, harangued by the grassroots members for not consulting them over his so-called mansion tax. This is, we talked about it on Monday, the levy they want to impose on anyone who owns a home worth more than £1 million. While several senior figures, including former health spokesperson Evan Harris, have slated Nick Clegg for delivering too gloomy a message and alienating traditional Lib Dem voters. His U-turn on university tuition fees, they wanted to scrap them, but Clegg says now they can't really afford to do that. Has also damaged his standing, none of which, I think, is good news in the run-up to an election. But does any of this matter to anyone but die-hard, sandal-wearing Lib Demers? Can they even continue to lay claim to being Britain's third party after falling into 4th place behind Labour, UKIP and the Tories in the European elections back in May? I mean, Nick Clegg could announce plans to move Parliament to the moon if he wanted to. It's just never going to happen. And this week's conference hasn't been good news for the party because, in my view, what they need to show is unity and strength, not confusion and disarray. And I speak as someone who has voted for the Lib Dems, David. I know you're probably going to give them a bit of a roasting now, will you?
I think they're very important, which will surprise you.
It's not been a great conference, though,
I think they're incredibly important, but I think you have to understand how the nature of conference has changed. You know, in the old days, conference was about getting together, forming policy ideas, engaging with your activists on the ground. It, unfortunately, has turned into a media spectacle.
Well, hang on. To be fair, conference before a general election is normally a time of...
I'm trying to help them out here a bit, but they know it's now a media festival. You have 24-hour news coverage, and essentially, you're right, it's a banging drum before the general election. They have been really stupid not to get their act together. You know, to announce, for example, the mansion tax without actually talking to the representative, Julia Goldsworthy, who's actually the member of Parliament responsible for council tax. She didn't even know that they were going to say this. So there's no cohesion there about what they're actually trying to do. I think they're very important, and they're really important for one other reason, which is if there is a hung Parliament, then they could be very important in holding the balance of power.
Couldn't UKIP take that role now?
Well, let's go back to the European elections as well. People vote very differently in a European election to how they vote in a local election. And Lib Dems did well in the local elections. They always do well in the locals. I think when push comes to shove in the general election, I don't think they're going to do as well.
Who is our third party, rather? Is it Lib Dems or is it UKIP?
I think UKIP is a very strong party, but I think it will depend how important Europe becomes towards the general election.
Do you think they've had a good week, Faye?
I don't care. It is a mystery. If I see a headline which says Lib Dem, I don't read it, and that's it. And I don't know what it is. I think it's something to do, speaking from an advertising background, I think it's something to do with the name, with the word, with the hyphen, with the sort of throwaway thing, which means you'll vote for it in a local election, but you won't trust it to...
a safe place to make a protest.
It's a safe place to make a protest, but you do not take it seriously, and it somehow simply bores you. And it's hard cheese, and they'll have to change their name, and then they won't fit into the headlines. And
do you know what?
What's going to happen?
See, I still quite like some of the things. In fact, I like a lot of the things they stand for.
But you don't think they're the party of government. I have to be behind them, do you?
No.
No. And that's their...
But they're behind the airbrushing and the model thing, that any adverts featuring models that have been airbrushed should carry some kind of warning to that effect. I think that's a great policy. It's a small policy, but it's a great policy. The mansion tax, I think the way it was handled was awful. The university tuition fees, I think Nick Clegg is being pragmatic, quite frankly. If you can't afford something, you can't afford it. Let's face it, all the parties are thinking about cuts. Are you bothered by the Lib Dems, Amanda?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think, you know, there are a lot of things that they do that I do agree with, but I think I grew up, you know, very staunch Labour family, absolutely, and I, like most of the country, have become completely disillusioned with Gordon Brown and his party. So then I think to myself, right, who am I going to vote for? Tories? Possibly. Lib Dems, possibly. But then I think, well, if I vote for the Lib Dems, they're never going to get in. So what's the point? It's a wasted vote. And I think that that's probably the way a lot of people think.
Do you know, that was the headline. I can still remember it because I was a politically active kid in, I think it was 1979 election. The full-page, front-page headline on the Express, which was then a broadsheet paper, was, I think it read, remember, a Liberal vote is a wasted vote.
Yeah, and that's what, and it's
79.
still there now. And you know, do they need to sort their PR out? Why is it as a, you know, I think of myself...
Well, you say PR. I mean, conference is a
yeah, well, that was,
is the PR opportunity.
That was dreadful. That was appalling. A lot of what happened. So yeah.
I'm told we have lots of angry Lib Demers on the phone. Oh, I'm terrified. Let's bring them on, Kirsty.
The first person is Lindsay on line 1.
Morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
Are you an angry Lib Demer?
Well, I wouldn't say angry, but I get quite frustrated, you know, the way they're perceived in the media.
OK. Isn't that partly the party's fault, especially as far as conference has gone this week?
Well, the conference hasn't gone well, but I just feel like on the news it's always Conservative and Labour that are discussed. They don't really talk about them very much. And also, because of the political system, everyone, as you just mentioned, the wasted vote theory is still out there. A lot of people actually think the Liberal Democrats are quite a good party, but they know at the end of the day, because we don't have the first past the post system, it's not going to count. Because most people are Labour or Conservative, always have been, always will be, won't think about changing. They're either a traditional Labour or traditional Conservative voter, or in Scotland, SNP, of course.
OK. What's been your perception of conference this week?
Well, it's been a bit of a mess, but at the end of the day, I still think heated debate is better than no debate.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I just think in the run-up to an election...
Yeah.
And this will be the last conference before an election.
Yes.
You expect? Yeah. I mean, I expected better.
Yes,
yeah.
I understand.
So you're disappointed rather than disaffected.
I mean, for example, this idea. I know it's been badly handled about the £1 million properties.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a radical thought. Because let's be honest, in this country, under a so-called Labour government, the rich are getting richer and the poor are still getting poorer. This is, to me, a forward-thinking idea. And to increase the tax threshold to £10,000, we get some people out of poverty and get some people actually thinking it's worthwhile working rather than sitting in the house.
OK.
But if you're going to form a government, then you have to inform those people who could be in the cabinet of what your policy might be just a few months before the election.
To be fair to Lindsay,
I mean, but let's be honest, there's a lot of people that are very poor and there's a lot of people who are very, very wealthy. And I think it's time to sort out national debt. The only way to do that is to make people have money. Chip in a bit more.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's one of the ways of doing it, of course. Cutting costs is another way. Thank you for the call, Lindsay. Let's have another.
We have Fiona, and she's on line 2.
Fiona, good morning.
Good morning, Matthew.
Are you an angry Lib Demer, Fiona?
Well, no, I'm not actually. I'm not actually a Lib Dem supporter, but actually I think they've had a bit of a rough deal with the media. I think...
Whose fault is that, Fiona?
Well, people are saying that perhaps it's the Lib Dems' PR... you know,
hang on. To be fair, right, all the rows, and it seems to be one of their most sort of, one of the most unfortunate conferences. All of the rows have actually begun with either Lib Dem MPs or senior figures within the party arguing with other Lib Dem MPs or senior figures in the party, and the media is sitting there thinking they can't believe their luck.
Yeah.
It's not the media that's inventing it. This is right at the heart of conference. It should have been drum banging rather, a really progressive, forward-looking conference, ready for the election, bring people in under, you know, interesting new policies. Mansion tax is an interesting policy, whether or not you like it or not is irrelevant. But it should have been discussed, shouldn't it, Fiona, with the party?
Yes, I think it should, and I think they should change leader. I seriously believe they should change leader.
To who?
Well, I think Vince Cable would do an exceptional job. Exceptional job, and I'm not a Lib Dem.
But he's the guy. He's the guy that's being. I mean, he's the guy behind the mansion tax that didn't share it with his party. You could argue. I mean, that's a huge mistake on his part.
Well, I think most people, middle-class people, have got a second home in this country. Most middle-class people have got a second home. Yes, they're mortgaged to the hilt. People live beyond their means. We've got greedy. But I think out of all the politicians, Vincent Cable, he comes across to me. I mean, he is in my constituency.
Well, he may be, but he is the guy that introduced a new policy without telling any of his party, or certainly senior figures within the party, and that gave the media an opportunity to beat the Lib Dems. So, I mean, he's a fantastic politician, but that was a big mistake of his, I think.
Do you think strategically they could change leader? They've got 7 months till the election. Do you think they could then pull themselves around?
Mad, wouldn't it?
Well...
Go on, Fiona.
Yeah, I think they could. I think Vince could really pull it off. He appeals to the younger, the older generation. He woos in all walks of life. The very fact he has a doctor's title behind his name, I would find that a very approachable...
OK, all right, OK. Although there was a story in the papers today that said male doctors are the ones most likely to make mistakes. Sorry, David. I didn't bring it up to spare your feelings, but that's what it said in black and white. And the papers never lie. Thank you, Fiona.